Hello and welcome to Normal Ireland Live. It's Monday, so you're joined by me and, you know, for all the Star Wars fans, the film franchise I've never watched, may the fourth be with you. Do you remember the advert phones for you? That's the sort of energy it gives. Anyway, I'm joined by Curtis. Hey Curtis, how are you?
I'm really good. Oh, we've got so much to talk about tonight, haven't we? And
We do.
I fear I might let loose a little bit because the media have been very naughty, and we're here to break it down, aren't we?
We are.
But I'm
We are
excited to be with
here.
you tonight. It's going to be
I'm
a great show.
excited for you to be here. I'm ready for Curtis's rants. That's what I'm ready for. But coming up on tonight's show, we're going to unpack how disgraceful Trevor Phillips was, but how much Zack Polansky dismantles Trevor Phillips on Sky News, the absolute takedown. We've also just going to add on to that the idea that Zack Polansky gives a masterclass on Laura Kuenssberg, Gary Stevenson attacked after supporting the Greens, and lastly, Reform's new detention centre proposals in places that are voting Green. You can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member for just 99p. On to our first story though. What did you guys do on Sunday? Did you go for a leisurely bank holiday walk, or did you watch Trevor Phillips's feeble attempt at being a journalist? Let's have a look at Phillips interrogate Polansky on the retweet he did on the Golders Green attack that took place last week.
You retweeted this message about the behaviour of a group of Metropolitan Police officers when they had probably just saved several lives, including, by the way, the life of Essa Suleiman, who's since been arrested and charged with attempted murder because the armed police were on the way, and had he not been subdued, who knows what would have happened. What on earth was going through your head when you retweeted that? I know you've apologised, but how did you get to that place?
I think you can both recognise the bravery of officers who run towards incidents that most of us, including myself, would certainly want to run away from, and find the appropriate forum to say that no one, especially the police, should be above scrutiny. Reason why I've apologised is I accept that wasn't the appropriate forum. As a member of the London Assembly, a place I know you know well, the Police and Crime Committee would be an appropriate place, or indeed a meeting with the Commissioner, which I'm pleased I've reached out and he's now agreed to. I do also think, by the way, open letters aren't an appropriate way to do politics either in a local election, but I accept all of that and I'll be having that conversation with the Commissioner.
But you chose X to do
I
this.
feel like
And
we're going
I'm
to see
just
Trevor Phillips embarrass himself even more, but
what prompted you to look at this message and to repost it? You can say you didn't endorse it and so on, but you made a choice to do this. And I'm just curious, what thought process led you to do that?
Well, the first thing I did was recognise that this was a horrific crime, and I showed solidarity to the victims and their families. I then thanked the emergency responders for the brave work they did. I found it all very traumatic, especially as a Jewish person, and I also found the video that was circulating online traumatic too. I accept, though, that conversation about that video needs to be had with the Commissioner rather than on X.
You made a mistake, presumably, because you were traumatised then.
Well, you generally apologise when you make mistakes for putting that in the wrong forum. It should be something I take directly to the Commissioner, and I accept that.
What an embarrassing interview conducted by Phillips, by the way. It felt like he was asking the same question over and over, trying to insinuate the same thing over and over. And just like this, again, feeble attempt to make the interview not about the things that actually it should be about: anti-Semitism, not about Gaza, not about police accountability, not about Jewish safety, but about whether Zack Polansky could be made to trip up at some point in that. And the reason Zack handled that so well is because he refused the frame that Trevor Phillips was trying to put out there. Like when Trevor's asking, what on earth was going on through your head when you retweeted that? Like, Zack does the thing that mainstream media fucking hates. Like, he answers the question like a fucking adult. He's like, well, I'm doing what I need to do and I apologise, because that's what you do when you know that you've done wrong. And it's almost like Trevor's like, yeah, but and then what? And then what? So he says it was not appropriate to retweet it in that moment, but he refuses to concede the bigger principle that the police are not above scrutiny, which is true. And that's really important, because the second that you begin to like cave in and say that this was a terrible anti-Semitic attack, therefore the police response can never be questioned, I think you've then stopped, doing what we should all be doing, that's being anti-racist, and start doing like the worship for the state, which we shouldn't ever be doing. But The police do not become infallible because the suspect is accused of something appalling. Obviously, what he did was appalling. And open letters from police commissioners attacking elected politicians in the middle of an election campaign. It's not very neutral, is it? They are doing too much. But Trevor wasn't interested in that, was he? What really irked me, like I said, is how many times he repeated the same thing over and over, just rephrasing it every time, kept asking the same thing over and over, because it's not about getting any sort of clarity. I think it's just trying to smear Zack as much as possible, making Zack grovel, but Zack wouldn't cave in. Anyways, let's watch another shameful exchange led by none other than Trevor.
Which is what the government stands behind and which police operate today. That's wrong.
Well, as I repeat, as a Jewish person, I march with many Jewish people on those marches. Now, there are already laws to deal with.
But you're not all Jews. I'm just saying that currently the policy is...
But why is my Jewish identity being erased from this conversation?
No, I'm not erasing it.
So many people on those marches.
Don't try that one on me. My point is that currently the policy is that if somebody believes that an incident is a hate crime, whether they are a victim or not, it is recorded as such by the police. It is regarded as such by the courts. What you are saying is because you don't think it's a hate crime, it shouldn't be.
If hate crimes are being committed on the marches, then those should be dealt with, and there's already laws for those. As I said, on those marches, I've not seen hate crimes, and I think it's an outrageous slur on many, many people who are marching for peace. The world is actually upside down.
And others who think it is. What's wrong with that?
Those are not hate marches.
It's in their minds.
Well, I think if they've not seen evidence of them being hate marches, then I think, yes, that is a perception issue.
So, yeah, what's become even clearer in all of this is just how deeply unserious this hate marches framing has become. Trevor Phillips effectively attempted to argue that the existence of an accusation constitutes evidence of the thing itself. And the logic was breathtakingly circular. Some people say these marches are hateful, therefore the marches must be hateful. But that's not how politics functions on inherited accusation. If it could, then every civil rights movement in history would have been illegitimate, because every movement against entrenched power has been called hateful by those invested in maintaining that power. But I think what Zack articulated really well, and what made Trevor seemingly uncomfortable, is that Jewish identity is not politically monolithic. Like, he literally says, hey, why is my Jewish identity being erased from this conversation? So powerful, so significant. And then Trevor saying responsible, don't try that on me, is revealing. It's really, really revealing. Because it seems that there's this, I don't know, this hierarchy of whose Jewish identity is going to be prioritised and whose Jewish identity is going to be taken into consideration. Well, the one that supports the political status quo, that's the one that's centred and legitimised. But the one that's not going to be prioritised, like Zack's, disrupts the political status quo, all of a sudden becomes quite inconvenient and therefore quite dismissible. And people agree. You've got Saul Staniforth tweeting this. Trevor Phillips tries to argue that because some people say the pro-Palestinian marches are hate marches, they are. Zack Polanski's spot on. There is nothing hateful about marching in support of the Palestinians and against Israel's brutal occupation and genocide. And what Zack then does very powerfully is shift the conversation from these accusations of anti-Semitism into actual lived experience. And in doing so, he exposes the profound hypocrisy at the centre of this conversation.
Anti-Semitism and Jewish safety is not some abstract concept for me. In fact, in the last 6 weeks alone, 2 people have actually been arrested in relation to anti-Semitic actions towards me. And yesterday, the Times newspaper published a vile anti-Semitic cartoon, which we've asked them to apologise for. Now, I don't believe that we make Jewish safety any better by escalating tensions. I think it's really important we recognise how scary it is at the moment for so many communities. We saw 3 people stabbed this week on Wednesday, 1 Muslim man and 2 Jewish men. And I think it's important that we all work as leaders to de-escalate tensions, to bring communities together, recognise the work of interfaith groups and also non-faith groups as well.
So, like, what Zack is doing is that he's making sure that people are confronting something that is uncomfortable. The fact that anti-Semitism is not only real, of course it's real, but it's being directed at him. And yet the people most loudly claiming to care about anti-Semitism seem so strikingly unbothered by that. And again, like I said earlier, this reveals something so ugly but undeniably true. There's a hierarchy, not just of Jewish voices, but of anti-Semitism itself. Anti-Semitism directed at establishment-approved Jewish people was treated as a crisis of civilization, but anti-Semitism directed at Jews who challenge power, challenge Israel, or challenge mainstream media and elite consensus is often minimized, ignored, or reframed. And that seems pretty convenient. Then we had this panel interaction. Let's have a look.
It's too much to say that Zack Polansky is inciting hatred and anti-Semitism. He's not doing that. He's seeking to find a way where he can be an agent for peace, in my opinion. But he's not inciting any hatred against Jews. I've never seen him do that, and he didn't do that in this interview.
Peace? If you accuse people
Because he believes in peace, and he believes that the Israeli state has committed mass murder in Gaza and is facilitating the murder of hundreds of people on the West Bank.
But it's a lie.
I believe that's true as well.
But it's a lie.
It isn't a lie.
Isn't that so wild, that whole exchange? So wild. One of the panelists attempts to argue that it's a lie to say Israel's committing mass murder in Gaza. And from there, the implication is obvious that if Zack Polansky objects to that framing, he must somehow be participating in anti-Semitism. Curtis, just on that, what does Trevor Phillips' treatment of Zack tell us about which Jewish voices are considered legitimate in British political discourse?
I mean, that was so clear to see from Trevor Phillips. It was such a knee-jerk reaction from him, and quite shameful. You know, we have for years seen the political establishment and politicians basically say, or basically weaponize Jewish identity when we call out a genocide, when we criticize Israel. We've had that for years. And then Zack says, by the way, I'm also Jewish, so don't sort of diminish my view. I'm a pro-Palestinian person. I call out Israel's genocide, but I obviously care about anti-Semitism. And Trevor Phillips to come back and say, no, don't try that at me. Are you fucking serious, Trevor? Are you serious? I mean, this is the rules that you played. So don't start crying about it when the roles are reversed. You've said for so long that Jewish identity is the most important thing and anything else doesn't matter, because I think we can probably concede that the majority of Jewish people in this country are Zionists. And sometimes the feelings of Jewish people is almost like put above our criticisms of Israel. Now, that's not Jewish people themselves telling us. That's what the media say. That's what people like Trevor Phillips say. They say you're being insensitive to Jewish people. Now, of course, there is no contradiction between supporting Palestinians and criticizing war crimes and Jewish identity. There's no contradiction, but the media have done that. And now we have Zack Polansky, a Jewish man who's very prominent now, a leader of a political party that has 225,000 members, has 20% in the polls. I mean, one was 21%. They're probably around 15%. A prominent figure, right? An anti-Zionist prominent figure, which we haven't seen for a long, long time, because the voices, the Jewish voices in the media, have explicitly been Zionist. Sometimes they might bring on an anti-Zionist Jewish person, but it's the media seen through the lens of Zionism and Judaism or Jewishness as one and the same when it's not. So Zack's like, my experience matters. And then Trevor Phillips is like, no, you can't do that with me. That's fucking insane. And of course, he'll be walking away thinking, I did nothing wrong there. This is coming from a man, by the way, who was kicked out the Labour Party for Islamophobia. This man probably deeply, I mean, it's speculation, I guess, but I think this man has a problem with Muslims, if I'm honest. And clearly he has a problem with Jewish people who stand in solidarity with Muslims. Because obviously that's not right to him. But yes, he was suspended from Labour for Islamophobia, I believe. I don't know what ended up happening in that case. And you just saw it on display on Sky News, how incredibly biased it was. This is also the same man who is good friends with Peter Mandelson. He went to his wedding. I don't know if he was best man or not. I mean, someone could probably tell me in the comments. He went to Peter Mandelson's wedding. And not only that, it was only recently where he come out and defended Mandelson. Because there were lots of corporate journos who were like gliding Peter Mandelson. And then over the last couple of months, all the big scandals have happened. A lot of them have retreated. They said, oh my God, Peter Mandelson was so bad. It's funny because Trevor Phillips called out those journalists, not in the way we would call them out. He said they stood with Peter Mandelson then. Why are they not standing with him now? I'm standing with Peter Mandelson. Fucking crazy. We'll talk about like Laura Kuenssberg in a second, but at the end of the day, this is what the corporate media does. They hyper-focus on a particular kind of Jewish person and not just ignore, but almost act in a very hostile way to a Jewish person who has a different point of view. And this is the same double standard we got with the Jeremy Corbyn years, and it's the same double standard today. You would have thought, by the way, that since, you know, the Jeremy Corbyn leadership and the fake anti-Semitism scandal we had, you would have thought since the 7th of October, in which Israel slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people, you would have thought when it was revealed that the IDF or the IOF was sniping babies in the head, where they were using dogs to rape Palestinians, where they were using knives to rape Palestinians, that maybe the media might sort of self-reflect and go, okay, maybe we should listen to other voices, especially Jewish voices that are more critical of Israel. Oh no, they're acting in the exact same way as what we saw between 2015 and 2019. Of course, the media won't learn their lesson because they have no incentive to, because the political establishment, part of the political establishment, is Zionism. Why is the political establishment and Zionism one of the same? Because the political establishment believes in imperialism, and Zionism is imperialism. It's not a religious war between Muslims and Jews, in which the right wing want to tell you that it is. No, it's geopolitics. It's about ethnic cleansing, weaponization, the Greater Israel Project, and of course what's good for imperialism, what's good for Israeli imperialism and American imperialism is always good for Britain, because we love doing that. We're never going to break away from that. So the corporate media is never going to change its ways because that's embedded into it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just so insincere. It's so insincere, but it's also just so aligned with mainstream media that they're obviously going to delegitimize the wrong kind of Jewish person that doesn't fulfill like their agenda. It's like, no, Polansky, we're still going to put you in the category of breast whisperer, and we're still going to put you in the category of wrong type of Jew. Like, it's just tiring. I never really see an interrogation on Zack's policies or the things that he's proposing. It's more just we're going to try and attack your character, and then when you do try and remind us of your identity, we're going to try and delegitimize that for you. It's a bit of a piss take.
And the thing is, though, what I want to say is I'm not in the realm of identity politics in which your personal identity automatically supersedes everything else. I despise that kind of politics. Like, I think it's important to say, oh, as a black person or as a Jewish person, I've experienced this thing, and maybe I have a bit more knowledge about this particular thing than you do. But what I do hate is when it's used to shut down debates. And that is what was done with Israel. The amount of times that we weren't allowed to criticize Israel because a prominent Zionist Jewish person said, well, that's very anti-Semitic. You can't do that. You're not Jewish. You can't do that. Jeremy Corbyn's not Jewish. How does he know? And I hate that, because you can be non-Jewish and objectively correct on Israel, and you can be Jewish and be objectively wrong. And the objectively correct position on Israel is it's an apartheid state, it's an ethno-nationalist state, and it's committing a genocide. Doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not. Those are the facts. So Zack Polansky sort of throwing that back in the face of Trevor Phillips is kind of what we saw. It's a microcosm of what the entire political establishment did to the rest of us and said, you don't get to say anything about this because these prominent Jewish people said you can't. The Board of Deputies said that, as if the Board of Deputies are some kind of authority group. I mean, they're used as an authority group, but they're not, because they only represent Zionism. They don't represent Jews, by the way, right? Jewish people are not a monolith, and Zack Polansky said this. Jewish people have lots of different views. So do black people. So do white people, right? And to say that I represent the Jewish community, don't listen to that BS. But that's what the Board of Deputies do. And Jewish Voice for Labour, or not JVL, it's Jewish Labour Movement, for example. But all they are mouthpieces for Zionism. Yet, if the Board of Deputies criticise you, maybe you're problematic. It's BS. So, of course, Zack Polansky throws that back into Trevor Phillips' face and says, well, playing by these rules, I'm Jewish, don't diminish my identity. And his response is, don't play that with me.
That on me.
Are you fucking serious? Are you fucking... Get fucked. You're part of the circus that enable that kind of conversation and enable that kind of behaviour. And now you want to say it now? Now? Get fucked, Trevor.
Facts. That's a really. I think it's a nice segue into the next part of the story. Don't try that with me. It's actually hilarious. Zack Polansky appeared on Laura Kuenssberg on Sunday, and Laura began by asking him about his retweet criticising the police.
That you said you were sorry for sharing that opinion that questioned the behaviour of the police, but do you or do you not think that the police were heavy-handed in how they apprehended the suspect?
I was very concerned by what I saw, and I remain concerned. The reason why I've apologised is because I accept that X or social media is not the appropriate forum to have that concern. I also think an open letter from the Commissioner also wasn't necessarily the appropriate forum, but I'm glad we've resolved that now.
I'm not surprised that Laura Kuenssberg's asking him about the retweet. It just seems to be hot news around Polansky. But after giving his answer, she just continued to press him.
So you do still think that it looks like the police were heavy-handed, even though there was a man with a knife running along a British high street?
I think it's important to say that officers are incredibly brave when they run towards situations that most of us, including myself, will want to run away from. I also accept, as an elected member of the London Assembly, and in fact as a police and crime committee, that it's important that everyone who works in public service, including people who are being brave, should not be above scrutiny. And so I think it's important that I have that conversation with the Commissioner, and we always make sure that action's proportionate, no matter how brave.
Very reasonable answer. Seems like it, right? Seems pretty clear to me. But Laura continued to push.
But do you think that it was proportionate? I mean, everyone's seen the video, everyone's seen the pictures from all sorts of angles, because that's how things often happen in 2026. Do you think it was proportionate?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I'm not sure everyone has seen the video, because the video is so graphic, potentially understandably, and that's the conversation, that I don't think it's always been shared. That being said, I accept that social media is not the forum, and I don't think, sadly, national broadcast is the forum either.
Next, she asked me about anti-Semitism.
Wrong forum. The UK's counter-terror chief said that anti-Semitism is the biggest national security emergency in almost 10 years. Do you agree with that?
Jewish communities aren't safe, and this isn't an abstract idea for me as a Jewish person. In fact, in the last 6 weeks alone, 2 people have actually been arrested in relation to anti-Semitic actions towards me. And just yesterday, the Times newspaper published a pretty vile anti-Semitic caricature of me and have yet to apologise or withdraw that. I don't think we make Jewish people any safer, though, by pitting, we just had that conversation, you just had that conversation with Heidi Alexander about Palestinian marches. I am both pro-Palestinian and I'm Jewish, and I care about Jewish safety. There's no conflict in those positions. And actually, I think where some of the conflict comes is actually from Benjamin Netanyahu, who frequently conflates people's Jewish identities with supporting the Israeli government.
I mean, super solid answer, and it would be hard to disagree, but classic Laura in Laura fashion responded.
But the question I asked you is, do you agree with the UK's terror chief who said that anti-Semitism is the biggest national security emergency? I wasn't asking you about Benjamin Netanyahu's actions. I was asking if you agree with that view.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily helpful to compare emergencies, but I think there is an emergency, there is a problem, and we need to tackle anti-Semitism.
But it's quite a clear statement. He says it's the biggest emergency, national security emergency, since the ISIS attacks almost 10 years ago. Do you agree with that or not?
Well, there was a report out by the Joint Intelligence Chiefs recently that talked about emergencies to this country, being the climate crisis, about food security, indeed from threats to Russia and cybersecurity. So I'm not denying there is an issue with anti-Semitism, but what I am saying is I think all of these emergencies need dealing with.
Again, well answered. She then asked him about those who are not happy with the direction of the Greens.
Taken the party and thought, I don't like it one bit. I'm not happy.
I think he's completely wrong. When I ran to be leader of the Green Party, we had 50,000 members. We now have 227,000 members. We've quadrupled in the polls. And actually, I meet people all the time who have been in the party for 20, 30 years, who describe themselves as deep environmentalists, who are incredibly happy that the Green Party is being seen and being heard. Yes, on issues of social justice, on the fact that we have a toxic combination right now of high bills and low wages, and we need to deal with social justice, but also about environmental justice. We know that inequality is at the heart of the climate crisis. It's corporations that destroy our environment, destroy our democracy, and destroy our communities.
But
you can't separate these things.
Good riddance, though, to
she's a massive reason why I could never watch that. I can only watch clips of what happens on Laura's show because Laura's so insufferable. But finally, Zack called out Nigel Farage, who was supposed to be on Laura Kuenssberg, but guess what he did? pulled out last minute?
Absolutely determined. Nigel Farage didn't even bother to turn up today because he's on the run. The Green Party are ready to stop reform. We took on the billionaire donors in Gorton and Denton. We're going to do it right across England and Wales. Vote Green on Thursday.
What made Zack's Laura Kuenssberg appearance so effective was that after navigating all the hostility, all the shitty framing that she's positing, and her feeble attempts, just like Phillips, to drag him into an endless defensive clarification of grovelling, he did what a really good politician must do, and it's understand what must always happen. He returned the conversation to politics every single time, like legendary stuff. Curtis, what are your reactions to this? What did you make of Laura's line of questioning, and did Zack do a good job?
It's very interesting in how different worlds we inhabit and different universes we seem to inhabit. It seems like 50% of Twitter were saying that Zack Polansky's interviews, whether it was with Trevor Phillips, whether it was with Laura Kuenssberg, it was car crash. He couldn't answer a question, or he looked really angry as the interviewers destroyed him. You look at the other side of Twitter, and the other 50% say Zack Polansky did a great job. He absolutely destroyed the interviewers. So I think one thing to say is there's no objective reality anymore. And I think that happens because we live in a very atomized society. I think social media doesn't help with that. In fact, social media purports that, because social media kind of funnels you the kind of content you want to see. So we're all in each other's bubbles. So if I'm going to speak from a objective sense, it's very difficult to gauge. It literally depends on who you ask. If you agree with Zack Polansky, you're going to look at him like he did a great job. If you despise Zack Polansky, you're going to think he did a terrible job. Now, I'm a lefty. So are you going to be surprised about what I'm going to say next? No, but hopefully I can give you the reasons as to why. So I think that my reasons are objective, not just subjective. Yes, I thought Zack Polansky did extremely well. So let's take on the question surrounding anti-Semitism. I think that was my favorite answer from Zack, because, and this is something in which media propaganda or media bias can go over people's heads. So the premise here is that Laura Kuenssberg is saying, well, there is now a national emergency in terms of anti-Semitism. Okay. And immediately what Zack Polansky does, and I think is absolutely fantastic, is to say, well, hold on a second. I mean, we essentially have a national emergency for many things. Why are we specifically talking about anti-Semitism? And that is where the media can sort of, I think, pollute minds to basically push the idea that there is a hierarchy of racism, that it's specifically anti-Semitism that, one, is the most important, and two, is the one that's currently under the most crisis, for better words, right? Neither of these things are true. Of course, the first point, there should be no hierarchy of racism. Like, if you're anti-racist, you're an anti-racist to everything. You don't get to just be concerned about anti-Semitism and then be a massive Islamophobe. Yeah, that's the political establishment, by the way. So many like right-wing commentators who will say the most disgusting things about any forms of, the most disgusting racism, but are suddenly really concerned about anti-Semitism. Of course, that's just a proxy for being pro-Israel. But the second thing is anti-Semitism a unique crisis? I don't believe so. Let's take, I don't know, the actual Golders Green attack. Now, we still don't have the full facts. We don't know what's really going on. We can only take what's given to us through the media. It does look like an anti-Semitic attack. 2 Jewish people were stabbed in Golders Green. But what did the mainstream media ignore over and over again? That a man named Ismail Hussein, probably a Muslim, right, was also stabbed. Now, no one in the media said that. They kept on saying over and over again. Police reports kept saying 2 men were stabbed. No, 3 men were stabbed. So is it true that anti-Semitism is uniquely a crisis? Or is it that that racism, bigotry, and violence are all growing, yet the media is only focusing on one thing? Because the amount of attacks against Muslims are not portrayed in the media. What about the clubs, the recent queer club that was set on fire? The suspect was just let go. Do we talk about, a national emergency of homophobia? No. So the question from Laura Kuenssberg to Zack inherently is biased. Now, Zack's answer, technically he didn't directly answer it because she wanted a yes or no, but he was right not to do that because the reason, and Laura's pushing for this, had Zack said, I think the police and the government are wrong, that there's a specific anti-Semitism crisis, the entire corporate media and the BBC would say, oh my God, Zack Polansky is downplaying anti-Semitism. He said no. Of course, that's not what he's saying. He said, I don't think we should be pitting communities against each other. I don't think we should be like, oh, look, there's a national emergency for Jewish people, but there's no national emergency for Muslims. So he did that, but also he didn't quite say yes or no, because again, that's being a smart political communicator. That's something Zack Polansky is very good. And by the way, don't sit here and tell me he's not. You don't get to 226,000 members and 21% in the polls if you're a bad political communicator. He knows exactly what he's doing. So of course, Laura kept pushing him on that point. In terms of, I mean, I don't want to sort of relitigate the retweet gate, but it's crazy how this entire media storm has transpired from a retweet from Zack Polansky. Zack hasn't actually conceded his point, though. He hasn't said, I was wrong to retweet this, insofar that I no longer agree with the criticisms. He still pretty much says, I think we should hold the police to account. It was the forum in which it was done, Twitter or even the mainstream media. So I'm very glad that he hasn't gone, actually, no, the police did absolutely everything right. Having said that, from a strategy point of view, and I said this last week, it's something that Zack shouldn't have just weighed in on. I mean, he didn't really weigh on. He didn't make a statement, but even just a retweet. I think that's something, you got to pick your battles, right? And then the more popular you become, maybe just don't say anything about it. Let us on commentators on the left talk about it, because we're not winning anyone's votes, right? When you're a party leader, you need to get people's votes. And let's be honest, the majority of people would have absolutely hated Zack Polansky's position on it. I'm sorry, that's just true. But again, you know, Laura Kuenssberg is an incredibly biased, well-paid journalist, and she doesn't offer anything new or refreshing. It was the same kind of questions you get from Sky News. It was the same crowd, but I think Zack Polansky objectively did a very, very good job.
I completely agree with you. It is interesting because I remember when the Golders Green attack had happened, and I was speaking to people online, obviously, and I've actually just deactivated my account as a result of this, because I've realised that there's just no point talking to people online about certain things. But I said that there was a third victim. There was a third victim who I believe probably was Muslim. He definitely wasn't Jewish. He wasn't Jewish. And they were like, no, there wasn't. And I'm like, wait. There was a third victim that's been completely missed out from this whole story. But it is interesting how this whole Golders Green attack is now no longer about these victims, but about how they can frame Zack Polansky as anti-Semitic himself. So it feels like they're trying to do some sort of Corbyn takedown on Polansky. It's fucking sad.
It's a complete rerun, isn't it? And in a way, I'm a little bit surprised, because I thought, you know, we've done this before, we don't need to do it again. But I think it just shows the desperation from the political establishment that they have. There's no imagination. There's no imagination in their attacks. It's, Zack Polansky prefers our enemies to us. They did that with Jeremy Corbyn. It's leading a party with a hotbed of anti-Semitism, like word for word verbatim for Jeremy Corbyn. And I would have thought the media would have had a tougher time doing it because he's Jewish himself. But they're so fucking shameless. They're like, we don't care if he's Jewish. We're going to do it anyway. Whilst the Times puts out a cartoon, which, you know, some people say it's an anti-Semitic caricature of Zack Polansky. And again, there's no self-reflection from the media whatsoever. Remember, this is the rules of the game in Britain. You cannot criticize Israel, otherwise you're anti-Semitic. But you're absolutely allowed to be anti-Semitic against Jewish people who disagree with you on Israel.
Hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of what anti-Semitism is allowed. You're absolutely right. But I'm conscious of time. Thanks so much, Kate, for an excellent analysis. Probably unpack it with the comments. Sorry if my mic's a little bit quiet. I'm going to try and just enunciate and speak as loudly as possible. But Gary Stevenson publicly backed the Greens this weekend. Let's have a look.
You retweeted this message about the behaviour of a group of...
Do we have it?
If you want to stop inequality from growing, if you want to stop living standards from falling, I think this week you need to vote for the Green Party. And I've got my postal vote here, which I will be sending after this. And my postal vote, I'll be out voting for the Green Party. I think this is, it's pretty obvious why I've done this. We have one political party in this country which is really strongly advocating for wealth taxes. We have a government which really has just really given me no indication that they will ever be serious and even considering wealth taxes. They've been quite reluctant to talk to me about policy. So it is with a little bit of a heavy heart, because I would have loved to have a little bit more involvement. But the fact is, if you want wealth taxes in England in particular, the only way that you can indicate that to the Labour Party, who are the party in government, is to vote the Greens this week. So I would strongly advocate you to vote for Greens, and I will be voting Greens this week on Thursday.
Whoa, very bold. He said strongly. No reservations about that. Well, critics immediately rushed to dismiss Gary, of course, and who he is. Now, beforehand, everyone was kind of backing this guy, and now all of a sudden, they're considering him through this lens. Charlotte Gill said, "Lol, I told you. Gary Stevenson's a propagandist for the Green Red Alliance, same as Zoe Gardner, Faiza Shaheen and Grace Blakely. They all went through the Soros-funded school, quote-unquote, the New Economy Organisers Network, chosen because they were young and were deemed as good advertisements to the target vote, meant to look organic, like they naturally came to the conclusion that wealth taxes and green policies are the answer. This movement is so unbelievably artificial." My video from October last year, Gary Stevenson's part of a propaganda network for international socialism. Insane, right? Christopher Snowdon from the libertarian think tank for the Institute of Economic Affairs, who still won't reveal who funds them, said this: "Some have questioned his business acumen, but Gary Stevenson makes at least £127,260 a year from complaining about inequality on his Patreon." Okay, emoji. Gary Stevenson is a tool, does not understand basic economics. No wonder he is voting Green. Look at the emojis after. Like, God, have a fucking break. Peter McCormack, right-wing podcast host, tweeted this: "Incentives matter. Gary admitted on Piers Morgan that he'd made around £2 million as a trader. This may seem like a lot of money, but it's not retirement money on the lifestyle he'll maintain. Gary needs to sell books and awareness. He spotted a vulnerability with a particular group, so he sells emotional-based economics. It isn't actually economics, it's whinging and victim culture. His answers come down to socialism, but socialism harms the people he claims to want to help. Gary is wrong. Don't be a Gary." This is so fucking laughable. So laughable. Look at how quick they are to dismiss him. And I remember Curtis and I did a video on this last year, and we had said loads of people are going to come out and be like, Gary Stevenson's a communist, he's a socialist. Like, no, he fucking isn't. Wealth taxes, by the way, like, not even a socialist idea, to be honest with you. It genuinely just would make more sense if you actually care about the rising inequality that's happening in this country. Who would disagree with that? For years, Gary's been making the same argument that inequality is the defining economic crisis of our time, and it fucking is. Look at how many people are struggling. 1 in 3 kids, I have to keep saying this every time I'm on the show, 1 in 3 kids are living in poverty. That wealth concentration completely distorts democracy, housing, wages and opportunity. And the most complaining that happens isn't from Gary complaining that wealth inequality is so bad and that kids are starving. Please keep complaining about that. If you aren't complaining about that, fucking hell, wake up. Is that the only people I see complaining are the fucking billionaires and millionaires who are sad that they can't concentrate more of their wealth where they need it. Anyway, what I find really irritating about all of this, and none of the things that Gary's saying is new, but notice the timing of this backlash. It's only once Gary aligns himself, even loosely, but not in this case, very strongly, with an electoral vehicle, in this case the Greens and Zack Polansky's redistributive politics, that his economics suddenly becomes dangerous and illiterate and propagandistic. And that tells you that the objection was never really economic when it came to Gary. They'll only ever accept economic critique and treat it as tolerable when it sits in a box that makes it palatable to them, but it becomes intolerable when it threatens to organise itself into votes for parties that I think go against the status quo and actually want to sort out wealth inequality. So who would have thought that this would actually stress them out so much? Curtis, what are your thoughts on all this? I just want to get your reactions. What are your reactions to all of this?
Oh, they're rattled, aren't they?
Rattled.
I think that's my favourite line to use when the right wing throw the toys at the pram. Charlotte Gill, by the way, she's just an utter crank. She keeps on doing these like deep dive conspiracy things, and it's just, oh, nominally left-wing people are linked to left-wing organizations. There's nothing like conspiratorial about it. I mean, you'd be doing something wrong if you didn't do that. Like, that's what organizing like means. To organize, you join the left-wing group and then you meet up with like-minded people. Wow. Both Charlotte Gill and also Peter McCormack, I've had a few sort of run-ins on Twitter with him. Incredibly dense guy. These people keep saying socialism. First of all, Gary Stevenson is not a socialist. He's never once claimed he's a socialist, and wealth taxes are not socialism. This goes to show the depth of their knowledge when it comes to the political economy. What I find incredibly ironic, which is that you always see this thing against people on the left, or people who espouse centre-left economic ideas, is that the left don't understand the economy. They need to go back to school. It's abacus economics. Whilst then going, but by the way, everything is supply and demand. And it's like, okay, but supply and demand is like the first thing you're taught. If that's as far as you go in terms of understanding the economy, then maybe you shouldn't be telling other people that their economics is very childish, because you just keep coming to one thing. The thing is, though, these people like Peter McCormack and stuff, they've never understood the political economy, right? Everyone understands the very basic fundamental inner workings of a market economy. Of course, yes, everyone understands supply and demand. But what they don't look into is the political side. It's like a libertarian who in their minds have this great idea of a society burdened of regulations and rules and freedom. But libertarianism wouldn't work like that. It's the same as neoliberalism. It's like, oh, we cut taxes and regulations, and free businesses and from the shackles of government. People are going to become free. What happened? The wealth just trickled to the top, and inequality has exploded. And we're in the mess today because of the thought process, the very childish thought process of, oh, well, don't worry. If the rich get richer, the wealth will trickle down. That's the difference between like theory brain and practical brain. Of course, we all have our theories. I'm a Marxist, but you also need to apply it in the real world, and you also need to add practical scrutiny. If you simply just say, allow the rich to get rich and scrap taxes or cut taxes and scrap regulation, and then everyone's rich, that's a theory in your mind, which obviously hasn't worked. I mean, we're going to get the world's first trillionaire in terms of Elon Musk, yet food bank usage has gone up. Does that sound like an economy that works? Now, back to the substance of what Gary Stevenson is saying. He's simply talking about wealth taxes. And again, people like Peter McCormack think it's socialism. This is not socialism. This is social democracy, barely. It's about fixing capitalism. Gary Stevenson probably isn't an anti-capitalist. He probably wants to protect capitalism, but he just wants a fairer system. That's it. Now, the point he's making is nothing about whinging or envy. It's about understanding that having a grossly unequal society is bad for society and it's bad for the economy. Because what we have now, the gross levels of inequality, means that the rest of us, that the middle class, are being bought out from basic fundamentals our parents and our grandparents had. What do they have? They managed to get a house. They could get a mortgage. They could pay rent. They could pay bills. And the fundamental things that they enjoyed fairly cheaply, fairly easily, we can't get. Now, why is that happening? It's happening because we've had an explosion of wealth inequality, and the 1%, the 0.1%, are buying up all the assets. And they're doing that because they're not just rich. They're so unbelievably wealthy that all they're doing is just using their existing capital to enrich themselves, but they're using assets to do it. These people today who are super rich, they're not getting rich because they created an amazing product and everyone loves it and people are buying it and that's why. Oh, it's just because capitalism is working. It's not the reason. The reason the rich are getting super rich is because they're using assets and their existing capital to make themselves even richer. The reason why house prices are so expensive is because they've been made scarce. Now, one might say, a free marketeer might say, you just need to build more housing. In 2019, I want to hammer this point. In 2019, we had a record number of houses being built, yet we still had a housing crisis. So the scarcity is manufactured, and that's the way capitalism works, right? Scarcity is manufactured. We do actually have an abundance of things, and more things are becoming very cheap to make. We can build housing very, very quickly, but because it's bought by big property portfolio landlords, it's bought by BlackRock. What they're doing is they're taking out housing, taking it out of the market, and then renting it back to you. The amount of properties that are just being built just to be letted out is crazy. Go on Rightmove, for example, and the amount of listings you'll see, the explosion of listings you'll see, which is just buy to let. So it's not the number of housing, it's the fact that we have housing that's made for not just profit, but for renting, because the capitalist class want you to rent forever. You know, the charge against communism, which is you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, is exactly what's happening under capitalism. Everything is being rented to you, whether it's video games, whether it's Netflix subscriptions. You're now getting like Uber Eats on Klarna, for fuck's sake. Like, we are not living in the type of economy we did before. What we need to do is build council houses, for example. So what Gary Stevenson is saying is, I'm not against people being rich. He himself is rich. I'm not against inequality. He probably doesn't want to make himself poor. What he's saying is the gross levels of inequality we have today is unsustainable. And that is categorically true. Now, it's funny for people like David Priestley, who Gary Stevenson debated. He keeps on jumping in on Gary Stevenson because the only relevant thing he did was debate Gary Stevenson. And all David Priestley, his argument, the thrust of his argument was simply, well, I'm rich and I don't like higher taxes. That was it. Well, of course, if you're a very wealthy person, of course you're going to be against wealth taxes because you're going to be here. Gary Stevenson is very rich and he might be impacted by wealth taxes, yet he supports it anyway. That means he actually has, I don't know, some kind of moral, or he understands the economy. Pointing to the fact that he earns 100 grand a year, I mean, I think he earns more than that. Pointing to the fact that he's a multimillionaire doesn't matter, because if he was poor and talked about inequality, they'd say you're jealous. If you're rich and you talk about inequality, they say you're a hypocrite. So the reality is no one wants to talk about inequality. So Gary Stevenson is absolutely bang on. Now, does that mean, you know, all of his policy prescriptions in every single area is right? Probably not. But when it comes to wealth taxes, like, it's really, really important.
I went on a 4-hour rant on TikTok yesterday about that the solution to the housing crisis is actually to abolish landlordism and landlords.
100%.
And I said that the building of council homes and making that a universal thing. And the one thing that I got time and time again was, why don't you just work harder? It's because you're jealous. And I said, you know what? Fuck you. Justify having 5 houses to me? Do one. Fucking boring. You're so right though, because what's missing entirely from the criticisms of those on Twitter, the fucking Gills of the world, is that there's no engagement with the actual analysis of inequality at all. No attempt to challenge the argument that wealth concentrates at the top whilst wages are stagnating below. And there's no serious rebuttal of the idea that Britain's economy has increasingly become an engine of extraction through rents and assets and inherited wealth. Instead, the argument is just, well, Gary attended a training program, a Soros training program, by the way, which is fucking anti-Semitic, insane.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. The left will say the existence of billionaires is wrong. The right says George Soros, and like, you do realize in terms of like the list of billionaires, George Soros is comparatively poor. Like, no one gives a fuck about Elon Musk, and again, he's probably going to be the world's first trillionaire. I had another point actually. I really want to hammer on. I think I've forgotten it now. But to be fair, it was to do with, it's not exactly like connected, but it's to do with left-wing econ policy, because I've seen lots of people criticize the £15 an hour minimum wage the Greens proposed, and the same types of people like Peter McCormack are like, this guy doesn't understand economics, basic economics. It's supply and demand. And again, please study further than your basic definitions. Like, if you're just understanding supply and demand and that's it, I don't think you should be accusing other people of being economically illiterate. Like, look into far more than just that, and then look into political economy. So the £50 an hour minimum wage absolutely in isolation will be difficult for small businesses. Many small businesses are making that much money, and like usually the biggest expenditure of a business is a wage bill. But this is what people don't talk about, particularly on the right wing, is they never talk about rents and bills. They only talk about business expenditure through the framing of wages and taxes. They'll say, like Adam Brooks goes on GB News and says, we need to just cut VAT and cut national insurance. I'm like, sure. I mean, I'm not particularly against small businesses having reduced business rates. I'm also not against reducing national insurance for businesses, but these are such small little sticking plaster politics, to borrow Keir Starmer's phrase. One of the biggest expenditures for business is commercial rent. Actually, this is very interesting. I had a debate on GB News with a pub landlord. He wasn't just a pub landlord. He was like some sort of figurehead of a federation of pubs. And it was billed on GB News as a debate. Basically, the stupid left wing and me and this guy who knows what he's talking about in terms of pubs. And they were talking about how Rachel Reeves is increasing taxes on pubs, and that's really, really bad for businesses. I said, look, the problem is that business owners, especially small business owners, face the same problem as individual people, as in rent, right? They have to pay rent. They also have to pay bills. So if you abolish landlords, which is the Green Party policy, imagine if local councils could rent out commercial properties at cost price to businesses. They would save so much money on rent. Because guess what? In a strange world we live in, the capitalist class are fighting among another. You've got the capitalist class who actually produce some kind of social good. You've got pubs who I think are very good for society. That's a social good. That's like the classic capitalism. But then you've got rentier capitalism, which is some other guy or some other company that owns a bunch of properties and are renting those properties to that other person that is at least selling something to the customer. The customer gets a pint or food, gets to enjoy their night. That's a social value in which renting isn't. So I'm like, cut out the middleman when it comes to renting. It's not just about individual people, but commercial landlords too. You save businesses loads of money. And guess what? When I said that on GB News, that pub landlord emailed me afterwards and said, everything you said was right. So it was supposed to be a debate between me and him. And he emailed and said, yeah, there's a massive problem with corporate landlords. I'm like, yes, but the only political party that's talking about it is the Greens, and Gary Stevenson has just endorsed the Green Party. So you can put this idea out of your head that the Greens are economically illiterate and Gary Stevenson doesn't know what he's talking about. Gary Stevenson and the Greens on the economy are actually saying something worthwhile. We need to break away from this neoliberal austerity crap we've heard from Reform, the Tories, the Labour Party and Lib Dems. The Greens are actually saying something substantive.
Agreed. Who are the Lib Dems? Can't remember who they are. But
72 MPs and they're irrelevant.
I don't know who they are. Before we move on though, thanks so much, Curtis. It's 2026. We really want this year to be big for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year and to really put ourselves on the map. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio and for our contributors to be paid for the work that we do, because we do this alongside our full-time jobs. Your support over the years has been amazing, and it's been seen, it's been appreciated, and we are ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations, as you know, so if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, and there you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. On to our final story. I'm conscious that this show has gone a little bit longer, but I think we've just had such great conversations. Third story. I don't think this man is worthy of a proper introduction, so let's just see the latest stunt that Reform are up to currently.
You,
Do we have...
This is Zack Polansky, a.k.a. the Breast Whisperer.
We came to you and said, can you make my breast bigger through hypnotherapy? And you said, yes.
But mind over memory is just one of Zack's many mad ideas. As illegal migrants continue to turn up on our shores, Zack and his Green Party say they want Britain to have no borders at all. Now it's clear that the failed Uni-Party era is over, and there is a battle for the soul of our country between Reform and the Greens. That's why today we announce an important new policy. In order to deport all illegal migrants in Britain, we're going to need to detain tens of thousands at a time. Migrants will not be able to leave these detention centres, and each will be held there for a couple of weeks before being deported. So here's our promise. A Reform government will not put any migrant detention centres in any constituency with a Reform MP. We will not put them where Reform controls the council. And of the remaining areas, we will prioritise Green parliamentary constituencies and Green-controlled councils to put those migrant detention centres. That means areas like right here in Brighton. Put simply, if you vote in a Reform council or a Reform MP, we guarantee you will not have a migrant detention centre near you. However, if you vote Green, there's a very good chance that you will. This way, everyone gets what they vote for. Visit votegreengetilegals.com. Britain is broken. Britain needs reform.
I'm sorry. I genuinely don't even know what to say. It's the fucking aviators. He needs to just take it off. Get off the streets of Brighton. If you think that's bad, they have a whole website, like he said when he was crossing his arms on the beaches of Brighton, dedicated to Vote Greens, Get Illegals. In order to support all illegal migrants in Britain, a Reform government will build detention capacity for at least 24,000 illegal migrants at a time. They will not be able to leave the detention centres and be held for a short period while they await deportation. We understand people feel strongly about living near detention sites, so we make this guarantee. Based on results from local elections and the next general election, no detention centre will be placed in any constituency with a Reform MP or in any council area controlled by Reform. Of the remaining areas, given the Green Party advocate for open borders, we will prioritise Green-held constituencies and Green-run councils to put these sites. They've published it and they've got this little search bar at the bottom where you can input your postcode and see if you're eligible for a detention centre in your area. It's really interesting. People have been trying it out, and this is what happened. Gorton and Denton prioritised for detention centres. Sorry. I wonder why. Funny that. Just again, tell me you're bitter about losing the by-election without telling me that you're bitter about losing the by-election. What do they actually think they're going to achieve here, though? It just sounds so 1940s Germany. Detention centres, fucking weird. Stop people who are already voting Green isn't going to happen. And you're calling Zack Polansky breast whisperer. Like, how old is he? It just feels so playground. But the sheer authoritarian instinct behind it should really scare people, regardless of where they stand on immigration, because what's being normalised here in the lead up to the election is that the idea that state infrastructure should be distributed not according to need, practicality, or like any sort of legality or public interest, but according to partisan reward and punishment. That's fucking insane. I could rant about this on and on, but it just feels very coercive. But what makes this so terrible is that over the weekend this took place. Migrants who died in Channel's small boat were a 16-year-old girl and a woman, says Charity. A boat carrying around 82 people ran aground on a beach in northern France, according to a local official. What's even sadder is the media framing around this. We've got this headline that says 2 women died trying to cross Channel in small boat. What baffles me is that why do they keep calling a 16-year-old a woman? They're always asking about the children. A child died crossing the Channel. A 16-year-old child and a woman, both of whom were Sudanese, died trying to seek refuge. Now, if you were expecting an outpouring of sympathy from the same people who ask where are the women and the girls, think again. You've got Valentina Gomez, an actual parasite. Just fucking disgusting woman, tweeted this in response. 80 illegal Muslims killed 2 women in a boat whilst illegally invading a country. They found dead on the boat. They did not drown. They were probably raped and killed. This wouldn't happen if Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood stopped all the boats in the luxury hotels. Shabana Mahmood likes to enforce borders on me, but not on the actual terrorists. Not her literally making this whole thing about her, a fucking loser. People lap this narrative up, but they don't realise how unsafe these journeys are. These journeys are so unsafe, how overcrowded these small boats are out of desperation. And the investigations taking place and the conclusions these individuals are jumping to are utterly insane. Curtis, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this, but give me your reaction to the utter helmet that is
the helmet. Oh, God. I mean, it's just yankification slop, isn't it? I mean, the guy walking around on Brighton Beach in a full suit with aviator sunglasses, you look like a tit. And not only that, I'm pretty sure his forehead spot is desperately trying to climb out of his head. It's getting bigger and bigger. It can't escape from this man any quicker. I think this is a massive failure of a political stunt. There's so many things that don't make sense about it. And I think they themselves are patting themselves in the back going, oh, what a lads, we got him. But there's so many things that don't make sense. First of all, obviously the message here is the Greens love open borders, so why not give them what they want? And if we're in power, we're going to put detention centres in Green constituencies. Big problem there. The Greens have never advocated for detention centres, right? Of course, they are more liberal on the border than Reform. Granted, a lot of people won't agree with that. But never have the Greens said, yes, we're very, very pro-migrant, stick them in detention centres. So that doesn't make sense, right? What would make sense is actually we're going to control our borders only in certain areas, but we're going to have unlimited immigration in Green constituency areas. Of course, that's not possible to do. But like if you wanted to make that point work, that's what you would say. So it makes no sense. Secondly, they have just told the British people that they don't seek to govern for everyone. Now, you often hear from political parties or presidents that win, they say, you may not have voted for me, but I'm going to be your prime minister. I'm going to be your president. I seek to represent you. If Reform win the next election, I want them to do the best job they can for the betterment of the people. I don't think they will, but that's what I want them to do. But they're actively saying, no, we are not going to govern for everyone. In fact, we're going to use the state against our political enemies. And actually, it's not even political enemies. It's voters. It's not like saying, if we're in power, we're going to punish Green politicians. They're literally saying, if you're a Green voter, we're going to punish you. Now, of course, the right wing are saying, aha, punish? Does that mean you've suddenly realized the contradiction here? Again, it's not left wing. It's not progressive, and it's certainly not Green Party policy to support detention centres. So it's not a contradiction. So yes, we can still say you're punishing people. And also for the Reform voters in Gorton and Denton, for example, or the Reform voters in which a Reform MP doesn't win, but they vote to Reform, do you think that's going to make them happy or piss them off? They're going to be like, right, they're now building a detention centre by my house. I don't want that. I specifically voted against that. Yet my MP and the party I voted for has specifically said, you're going to get one because the seat went Green. So they're not winning any votes. They're probably losing votes. The only way this could work is if they were to win Green votes, because obviously if the Green returns an MP, that means they got the highest amount of votes. That means to win it next time, you need to find some Green voters. And do you think Reform saying, by the way, I'm going to put a detention centre in your constituency because you're my political enemy, do you think that Green vote is going to turn around and be like, I think I'll vote Reform next time? Like, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. What this is complete desperation. Look, call me old-fashioned, but why can't political parties win people over and win their hearts and minds of people? The Green Party's doing it. Granted, not all their policies you will support. Not all their policies in terms of immigration, for example. It's a contentious issue, especially in this climate. But the Greens are saying unapologetically, we're going to defend migrants. We're also going to abolish landlords. We're going to raise the minimum wage. We're going to nationalise our public services. And they're just simply going, this is our policy platform, take it or leave it. Reform clearly are not confident in their own political or their policy platform, that they have to do gimmicks in which they're literally bribing voters by saying, if you vote for the Greens and the Greens win, we're going to do something bad to you. That is not just stupid, but also incredibly dangerous. And it's out of the Trump playbook. Again, these people should not be anywhere near the state when they're literally saying that potentially millions of ordinary people who happen to vote a different way is their political enemy. But look, the Reform Party have completely lost their source. Once upon a time, they were polling in 30%, 33%. And that was because, at the very least, they had some kind of niche that worked, which was civic nationalism, harsh on borders, which, again, a lot of people like that in this country, but also recognise that people are economically left-wing. People want wealth taxes, despite what the outriders against Gary Stevenson say. People want nationalisation of public services. People want a rise in minimum wage. People want action on the climate. People want an end to austerity and more investment. That's what people want. And Reform were polling really, really high when they said, we're not going to support the 2-child benefit cap. We are going to nationalise water. And they pretended to say, we are a break from austerity. And then, because obviously they're the party backed by the oligarchs, by the billionaires. I mean, they've received £12 million from Christopher Harborne, who's a Thai resident, so they love their foreign money. They pretend to be nationalists, but they love that foreign money. They were never going to bring in left-wing or centre-left economic policies, despite the fact that the majority of people in the country want it. They were never going to do that, but they exposed themselves too quickly. Now they've said they do support the 2-child benefit cap. Now they've gone backwards on their nationalisation policy. Now they even said, whilst I disagree, their populist stance of we're going to cut taxes across the board. Nigel Farage said late last year, well, the economy is so stuffed, we can't do that either. So all they're doing is parroting the political establishment's line of austerity. We're not going to nationalise public services, and we're going to keep the 2-child benefit cap. So you're literally no different to the Conservatives and Labour.
You know what? Reform, do it. Do it. Build a detention centre in a place where you have no power. Like, try get around that, honestly. They'll still be walking up and down Brighton Beach saying, we wanted this, and this is now a green place. Like, yeah, get out. Get the fuck out. And also, wanted you here in the first place.
What they haven't thought about as well is they're saying, it's going to happen in green areas. Okay,
How?
So green controlled areas, green controlled councils. So they're going to vote it down. The Greens are like, yeah, we're not going to support this. Like,
exactly.
Even on their own merits, it doesn't make sense. So you can't say we're going to put detention centres in green constituencies and green councils when the Green Party control the council and they're going to be like, yeah, we're obviously not going to vote for this. So it just makes them look utterly stupid. There is no world in which this works. Of course, a bunch of right wingers on Twitter like, this is masterful. It's shown the hypocrisy of the Greens. It really hasn't. It just shows them that they're a bunch of fucking idiots. They have they've lost their political source. And my God, please get Tsar Yusuf off the screen. He looks like such a tit, right? He looks like such a fucking dweeb.
Proper dweeb, like such a dweeb, man. No, it's true. Like, that's what I was saying. Like, how are you actually do it? Like, try build a detention centre in a place where you have no control. Like, you won't be able to do it anyway. Good luck to you. Good luck to you. Keep those aviators on because it's clouding your sense of judgment. Anyways, let's go to comments, shall we?
Let's do it.
I think we've got Ben.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, first things first, I want to apologise. I kept hitting the wrong button and bringing up that one video of Zack.
You were obsessed with Trevor Phillips, like can't get enough of him.
I was. So what happened was I was clicking between the comments and the video tab thing that we have, and it just takes it to the very top. It takes it right back to the beginning, which was the first video we played. But it was particularly good when Sarah was just like, "Oh, I'm sick of this guy," and then I put Zack Polansky on the screen. That was a bit of a mistake. Sorry. Didn't mean to do that. Anyway, let's get into the comments. I'd be dying to join the conversation, actually, because if there's so much interesting stuff. Let's go through some super chats first. People being very generous tonight. Thank you very much, guys. Michael gifted a Turn Left membership. Thank you, Michael. Always loyal. We love to see it. Adrena also gifted a Turn Left membership. Thank you, Adrena.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing. Terry Regan said, donated £5, and said, it does make me wonder, actually, how would Jeremy Corbyn have been treated if he was Jewish? What do we think?
Well, I think we've seen it. The way they're treating Zack Polansky, it's how they would have treated Jeremy Corbyn. Clearly that they haven't recognised that Zack's Jewish, that it hasn't stopped them from smearing him. So I think we actually have an example right in front of us, which would have been no different to how Jeremy Corbyn was treated when he was leader, because the media are utterly shameful.
Yeah, agreed. Mainstream media is a fucking joke. Like, the way that they're going in on Zack, focusing on everything that isn't to do with Green Party policy. It's just all to do with Okay, Zach, so this retweet that you did, let's just go back to the
Fucking
retweet that you did. This retweet that you did and you haven't taken down, let's just go back to that. And it's just like, fuck off. Like, this is exactly what you were trying to do with Corbyn. You're trying to do the exact same thing with Polanski. But I do think the difference between Polanski and Corbyn is that I think Polanski has a bit more aggression. That's what I think.
Have a bit more bite, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is needed.
It is.
Yeah. Not really yet. Rachel Atwood donated $5 and said, in a UK context, how far has the minimum wage fallen off the trajectory from the 70s, factoring in inflation? I'm afraid I don't know. But she says in the US, 1968 rates today would be $23 now. I suspect it's probably similar.
Yeah, so I think I looked into
£18.
this. I looked into this a while ago, and I think you're about right. I think it's 18 or 20 pounds an hour. The difference between us and America, though, is it's far more egregious in America because it's still $7.25 and it hasn't risen for decades. Our minimum wage, whilst it could be better, it's not the worst in the world. And I mean, we can talk about minimum wage in a second in regards to Europe, which I think would be an interesting conversation. It's not as bad here, but yes, in America, it's so fucking bad. Your congressmen and senators keep voting against increasing the minimum wage, and it's $7.25 an hour. Crazy. I know it's higher in some states, but like the minimum federally even.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know enough about minimum wage. Or at least I'd have to refresh myself. Becca donated $4.99 and said, not sure why I can't do gifted memberships today on my laptop, so here's a few quid.
Oh, thank you.
Great show, Sarah and Curtis. Vote green on Thursday if you can. Well said, Becca.
Oh, by the way, we are not beholden to Purdah laws, so fucking vote green.
Yeah.
They are, I think, your best chance. Again, I'm not a Green Party member. I'm not a spokesman for them. I will happily criticise them as I have, but I do think I'm just going to be objective here.
I will just say,
in the absence of your party, I think the Greens are just the best place left-wing vehicle at the moment. That things could change, but in these local elections, I think you got to vote green.
Yeah, I do think just be warned though, because you might get a detention centre and you're.
That's it. I'm voting for Restore instead then. Deus X gifted a Turn Left membership. Hello, Ollie. Good to see you. And Yuri Gibson gifted a Turn Left membership. Thank you very much, guys. You've been very generous today, and we do appreciate it. And the numbers have been really good today, which is fantastic to see. Hopefully, we're picking things up again. It's absolutely brilliant. Right. So let's take it from the top. So going back to the first story and Trevor Phillips, Jamie Alice rightly points out he, that being Trevor Phillips, would never speak to a Tory or Reform politician like that. Do you guys want to comment on double standards at all?
It's just classic mainstream media, though. Like, I think mainstream media has a right-wing bias. Like, when you think about which parties dominate the narratives online and in the mainstream media, it tends to be right-wing parties. But when it comes to the left, it's very much like, how can it's very defaming. Like, the narrative is always very like, oh, well, here we go again. They're trying to talk about drugs and open borders, and it's just also like hyperbolic. But then it makes everything that on the right seem so like just normalized, and that actually asking for wealth tax and trying to bring down wealth inequalities like just so asinine and weird. But yeah, I think just right-wing biases on mainstream media mean that they don't speak to Tory or Reform politicians like that.
I think like the BBC is like Blairite bias. It's like capital L biased. But of course, like especially on the economy, they're very Thatcherite. Then you've got like the Mirror, which is obviously just tied to Labour. The Guardian, again, they're capital L liberal. But then like you've got the press, which is overwhelmingly right wing. So I wouldn't say that the entire media is right wing, but I suppose in a way Blairism is kind of right wing. They're different shades of right wing, which is why you get lots of people who think the BBC is left wing. Because, all right, the BBC, who still parrot quite reactionary opinions on social issues, absolutely. There are probably a lot of journalists who are a bit more liberal on immigration. And then people are like, oh, so the BBC's left wing then. Like, no, it's not. In fact, Tom Mills, who's done excellent work on the BBC, I recommend you read his book, The BBC Myth of the Broadcaster. He documents the internal marketisation of the BBC, in which it became fully on Thatcherite. One of the main signifiers of this was dropping their Labour correspondent. It used to be the BBC would have a boss or business voice, but they would always have a Labour voice, a Labour correspondent who could say, this is the point of view from the worker. They scrapped that, and now it's entirely neoliberal. So essentially the media is very, very right-wing, but they're different kinds of right-wing, I would say. Ultimately, though, the best way to, I think, briefly explain the media is it has an establishment bias. Now, obviously, I think right-wing politics is establishment, but like it supports the rich and powerful. It supports the billionaire class. It supports imperialism. It supports war. That's why it's very, very tough on those who want a wealth tax. And it's very, 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 very tough on those who criticize war and criticize Israel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, double standards throughout our media. And yeah, I think Jamie is entirely correct about Tory and Reform politicians as being held to completely different standards.
Yeah.
Yuri said, never give an inch to a Zio-fascist. Zack and the Green Party attacked them. They don't like that when you laugh and call them pathetic cowards. And I think on the fundamental principle, I completely agree with Yuri. You cannot give an inch to these people. Like, you really cannot give an inch because they will take a fucking mile. You have to. It was a mistake. Like, I'm not dismissing Zack. I still absolutely love Zack. He's brilliant, but I do think it was a mistake for him to apologize, because as soon as you apologize for something, all people hear is you're apologizing for whatever the broader issue is. Oh, you apologized for anti-Semitism in the Green Party, did you? And he's going to have to be like, no, I didn't. And he's going to be making that correction for years to come, potentially. Just anytime you apologize, you're on the back foot. And it's, like, apologies are for good faith internal critiques, not this, which is bad faith external. Did either of you want to comment on sort of apologies?
I agree with that. You are on the back foot if you start apologizing, because they're always going to use it against you. Like, look at what Zara Yusuf was doing. Like, he's calling Zack Polansky a breast whisperer. Like, and I see pictures online.
Just say
of, like,
boob whisperer as well. Come on,
if you want to whisperer,
you said breast whisperer. I might just say boob whisperer. Or you scared about saying a naughty word?
Boobies.
Fucking dweeb. Boobies.
Oh my god. Yes, Becca said in the chat, as the Jews of all proportion in the chat might agree, and Becca is Jewish herself, I'm with Zack. Don't agree that opposing genocide, ethnic cleansing, apartheid and war crimes makes me, I presume that's supposed to say, makes me bad. Yeah, absolutely. There were other Jewish voices in the chat speaking out and going, hey, what the hell is this? Why are we being erased? What the hell? I did want to talk briefly about the McPherson principle, because Flow Snake rightly points out that Trevor Phillips told a Porky about the McPherson principle being something courts have to take into account. And Flow Snake says it isn't. It's about how the police record and investigate incidents. And that would make a lot more sense, because if your definition of a hate crime is any incident which is perceived to be racist by the victim or any other person, or any incident which is perceived to be hateful by the victim or any other person, how would you apply this to, say, trans people? Do you think the people making these comments, do you think Trevor Phillips would accept that any incident perceived to be hateful by a trans person or a Muslim, say, would they accept that that definition of like any incident which is perceived to be hateful by the victim or any other person? I don't think they would. I think, like, 100%. If somebody's being transphobic and they're called out for it, these are always the first people to go, well, you have to respect the gender critical views, or the we have to have a conversation about immigration or Muslims or something like that.
Islamophobia is a made up term. It doesn't exist. The same fuckers who say shit like that are extremely sensitive to anti-Semitism. Like Lawrence Fox, for example, is a massive racist. He literally recently was on camera saying we should be able to say the N-words, right? That's how racist he is. Yet he has, spoken about anti-Semitism on the left. It's almost like these people don't care about racism and it's their proxy to support Israel. Like, the sensitivities awarded to Jewish people from the political establishment, yet they don't do the same for other minorities, is so fucking transparent.
Yeah, specifically pro-Zionist Jewish people. It's not applied to Zack Polansky. It's not applied to Becker. It's not applied to Tumble Dry Meyer, one of our other guests. It's not applied to Michael Rosen or who's Navarra's Rivka Brown. These Jewish people, no, they're not. They don't count, right?
Like it's funny because you know how David Baddiel, his book Jews Don't Count, and it's kind of like the title should be like anti-Zionist Jews Don't Count, because he'd have a point. David Baddiel was famously a Zionist, by the way, just massive pro-Israel gimp, and he's got a book called Jews Don't Count, and it's basically saying about how like Zionists or anti-Semitism exists, but most of it is just criticism of Zionism. But yeah, if he said anti-Zionist Jews don't count, that's fucking true, because they don't count.
Absolutely. Sarah, sorry, I'm aware that I was talking a lot there.
Please feel free. No, there's nothing I don't want to say on that. Like I don't think I've got the remit to talk about that sort of stuff. But yeah, I completely agree with every point that you made.
Absolutely. I don't know if I like this one accidentally, actually. I understand his answer, but he's not answering her, presumably Laura Kuenssberg, directly. Curtis, did you tag this one?
Did.
Do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think I said it earlier, but yes, he didn't answer Laura Kuenssberg directly when the question was, the government have said that there's like a national emergency when it comes to anti-Semitism. I don't think it's a government, or maybe it's a police body. Anyway, there's a national emergency when it comes to anti-Semitism. Do you accept that? And Zack Polansky didn't say yes or no. He just said, I don't think we should be pitting communities against each other. I think it's probably harmful if we say, oh, there's a national emergency just against anti-Semitism. What about other forms of racism? But the reason why it's good that he didn't say yes or no, because as soon as he said or would have said no, it would have been, oh my God, you're downplaying anti-Semitism. The headlines would have been, oh my God, Zack Polansky says there is no national emergency for anti-Semitism. And this is where in politics, even if you're on the left, even if you're a decent politician, you cannot be 100% truthful. This is like, we all say we want a truthful politician who's honest, who's got integrity. Yes, to a point, but we don't want our politicians to be 100% truthful. Otherwise, they would get nowhere. You have to be smart in your communication. And as I said earlier, no one can argue that Zack is bad at communicating, because you don't get to 226,000 members or 21% of the polls if you're bad at it. So he was right to not say yes or no. He was right to give the answer he did. He couldn't have answered it any better, because as soon as you say yes or no, which is, the media do that, right? The media don't like nuance and discussion and conversation. They want sound bites. So often they're always closed questions. They're always, is it this, yes or no? Very satisfying when you're saying a politician you hate, a right-wing politician you hate, but it's not informative when you get someone to say, no, I just want yes or no. It's informative when you give them space to talk and bring in the complications and the nuance. So Zack answered it perfectly, and he was right not to answer her directly.
Yeah, because they're just playing into their hand. You're absolutely right. Completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Poodlefish Girl, who is another Jewish person in the chat who I wanted to highlight, said it's wild being a Jewish trans woman simultaneously at both ends of the hierarchy of discrimination. Lol. Yeah, 100%. And I just wanted to say as well, the counsellor that Laura Kuenssberg quoted, I discovered this through Helena, actually, full credit to Helena, Michael Dewally, or potentially Michael Dewally, I'm not exactly sure what the pronunciation is on that name, is a councillor from Norfolk who resigned from the Green Party, saying he was like looking on in horror at the lurch towards populist policies and ideology, something about ideology. Basically, he's just a fucking transphobe. And yeah, are we going to turn around and say because there was a because the victim in that scenario felt that the things that Michael Dewally said, or the victims potentially in that scenario are saying that the things that Michael Dewally said are motivated by hate. Are we gonna say that he's committed hate crimes on his way out of the Green Party? Is that the principle we're looking towards? I fumbled that a little bit, but you get the idea of what I'm going for.
I guess you're saying it's a slippery slope, which the media are happy to play when it comes to Zionist Jewish people. But at least, are you going to be consistent and give the same level of space and sensitivity to other groups? no, you won't.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely criticized perceived threats. Like, if you are a minority, black or Jewish otherwise, and you feel like you've been hate crimes, it's possible that it didn't exist, but you just felt that way. So I don't think like that's the road we should be going down. Like, oh, I felt uncomfortable. I mean, it opens doors to, like, we've seen like how, as a Jewish person, I went to a cake sale and I saw Free Palestine on a cake. Or Eve Barlow, Fartlow, I call her, she said that, I was driving in a car with my friend and she saw a sign that said free parking and she thought it said Free Palestine. These Jews are tired. I mean, do we take that as a serious threat? That's literally what she said. Do we take that seriously? Of course not. A free parking sign is not a fucking hate crime. No, that's what she said. So I'm like, I really don't like the idea of, because it's a perceived threat. However, Ben, where you're absolutely bang on, it's that we can do it for Jewish people who are pro-Israel, but if it's any other minority, their feelings don't matter. And it's like, be consistent at least, which they won't.
God, yeah. I do feel for people like Poodlefish Girl who see this from both sides, or to some degree from both sides, because of course I assume Poodlefish Girl is not a Zionist, so doesn't get those protections on her beliefs. But at the same time, like, being both Jewish and a trans woman, it must be so interesting seeing the different ways in which different aspects of your identity are treated. So I thought it was worth bringing up.
Sorry, Pood, I'm not laughing at your comment. I'm laughing at free parking. Oh, these Jews are tired.
Dude, she legit said that. She was like, my friend saw free parking. She thought it said Free Palestine. So. That's the shit we've got to put up with.
That's actually insane. They need to do. Let me not. She needs to do a little reading test because there's some accessibility arrangements there that could be put.
So Justin said, it's crazy that the media didn't care that Reform members literally throwing Nazi salutes at a Jewish man. The media despise that Zack is is Jewish, making it harder to label him as an anti-Semite. I do think it is going to be harder for them this time round.
Well, you would think so, right? And that's what I thought, but it seems like that's not the case. Now, it may be different from like for viewers, right? Maybe people tuning into Sky or the BBC and going, well, this guy's freaking Jewish. Like, this doesn't work. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But it clearly hasn't stopped the media. So does this even work? I don't know. I mean, look, when the media bombards you, I saw something really, really interesting. I can't remember the exact tweet thread, but I'm going to paraphrase, where someone put in a question. Or they put in a question to answer themselves, which is that surely this can't work again. Surely because Zack's Jewish, this won't work. Surely they won't buy into the smears. And this person said, yes, it can. Because not necessarily that people's going to buy into every single smear. However, when you flood the waves with these kinds of smears, and then you've got the politician always saying sorry, or people defending this person, rather than pinpointing that particular person on a particular point, what you have is a frame that this guy is clearly just not a good guy. So with Jeremy Corbyn, for example, a lot of people didn't like him, but they couldn't tell you why, because every single day there was just a smear after smear after smear. And whilst people weren't going to obviously believe that Jeremy Corbyn was a Czech spy, that's ridiculous. But if the media, like, this guy's bad over and over again, and all you hear is this guy's bad, you don't hear anything good, then people are just going to get negative vibes. And that's the problem that Zack Polansky faces, is that whilst people are not consuming legacy media the same people aren't watching legacy media like they did before. But if all you're hearing about Zack Polansky is he's an idiot, he's stupid, he's bad, he's this or that, it doesn't matter what you're lying about. It's about throwing shit at the wall and hoping some of it sticks. And the vibe people get is, well, maybe this guy isn't that good because all I'm hearing is negative stories. That's the danger. So it's really important that through all the fucking shit, the Greens have got put out positive policies, put out their positive vision, so that can cut through. Because yes, if you just inundate with people with negativity, people won't even know the reason why they don't like Zack Polansky. They're just like, I don't know, I was told he's bad every single day of my life for the last 4 years, so I guess he's bad.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. I'm struggling with that only because Only because, for example, like, I don't know. It's hard because I think everyone, irrespective of where they stand in the political spectrum, are like, yeah, I think Starmer's slimy. You know, I think he's weird, and I think it's because his the way that he conducts himself obviously ties in quite nicely to what people are saying. But then I don't know. Like, I don't know if people will fall into that trap. I hope
Let's
they
hope
don't.
not. But
I hope not.
that's why
but
we
we'll
exist, I
see.
suppose, to try and counteract that. But of course, we
Yeah,
don't
I
have
know.
millions
Depends
of
on how
viewers,
he
nor are we
conducts
corporately
himself.
backed. But you know.
Oh.
But what we do have, interestingly, is that a lot of like fairly high-profile voices, including we know Zack. He probably has less time for it these days, but we know that Zack listens to us, and so I think it is important that we emphasise the thing that we can do, which is like, hey, here's what we think would be good in terms of advice, and in terms of that, I'd say you've got to understand that most people don't see the ins and outs of political conversation. They don't go as deep as we go. Like the people watching this stream are people who are like engaged and they are interested. A lot of this is going to be based off a vague impression, right? And are you guys sort of familiar with Plato's allegory of the cave? Like the idea that imagine you've got a cave and there's a light coming in through the cave.
Oh, I think I know this, yeah.
And you can see sort of you're facing away from the light, and you can see vague images projected on the wall by somebody who's like got a like sock puppets, right? That sort of thing, like sort of a shadow show, if you like. It's that sort of impression. You only get an idea, and that's most people's experience of media. They get a vague idea, which is why you can't do the apology thing, which is why you can't be subtle about it. You've just got to emphasize the broadest idea, and you've just got to hit it hard and be unapologetic about that, because you're trying to like control a holistic narrative that most people are not going to see the ins and outs. They're not going to see how you create those shadows. They're only going to see the end result. They're only going to see the shadows themselves. So it's that much more important that when the media push, you push back, and you push back fucking hard, even when there's even when there's elements of your arguments that are weaker than others. You just put on a show that is one, it's just together, and you're just projecting a nice clear cut image for those people. It's kind of a bit of a subtle point, but yeah, and that means in the case of this comment about him being a Jewish person, it's harder to label him as an anti-Semite. Every time that an opportunity comes up to mention his Jewish identity, he should be taking it.
I agree.
And also, and also he should be absolutely unrelenting and unapologetic in all of his takes. Don't give him any ground, because they will use that to try and pull
Zach,
you apart.
if you're watching any of our shows, I really hope you're watching this one and take that advice. Waving him, because it's true. You got to be so confident in it, because someone left a beautiful comment earlier, which is that why should the left apologize for things they're right when the right never apologize for things they're wrong for? So I mean, I can't remember the last time David Cameron apologized. He went on to win the next election. I can't remember the last time Boris Johnson apologized and went on to win the election. I can't remember when Trump last apologized, and he's trying to win a third term. He'll make it. He'll try and make it happen. So Ben, you are absolutely spot on, as always. You are, though.
Sarah, did you want to jump in on that at all? Or are you
I
good?
think that's like really well said. Yeah, agreed.
Cool.
Agreed.
Awesome. So onto the Gary Stevenson stuff. Sorry, I highlighted a lot of comments, but I feel like it's been a good conversation, so it's worth following up. Deus Ex Ollie said economics is where you do austerity and tax cuts for the rich. Anything else isn't real economics.
So true.
It's true. It's
so
fucking
true.
Isn't it sad though? Isn't it sad that like we would expect that everyone's on the same page when it comes to wealth inequality? Like, hey, what's happening is not right. People relying on food banks is fucking awful. Hungry kids, sad. Damp homes, horrendous. Like all of these things, and then people are like, yeah, but you're asking to tax really rich people. I don't get it. Like, it makes no sense.
I mean, like, when it comes to inequality, people are on our side. Like, people
Most
want
people,
to see,
yeah.
they do want to see wealth inequality come down. I think this is kind of it's a little bit similar, but Louisa Munch. She's been on the show a few times. I absolutely love her work, by the way. She said something really great. She made a video and she said that we're all born communists and then you're taught to be a capitalist, right? And I think that's so true because everything we espouse today is all taught. So when you say we can't tax the rich, they'll leave, is that something that you developed yourself? Or was it because a bunch of rich people went on the airwaves and told you if you tax them, they're going to leave? So a lot of the crap we've been taught is basically being taught through the media, through everything. And where Ollie's absolutely right is austerity and tax cuts for the rich, that economic orthodoxy, which we've lived through for 40, 50 years, of course is the right opinion because an alternative hasn't really been presented, or at least hasn't been successful since the post-war consensus. During the post-war consensus, talking about tax cuts for the rich and privatization, you get looked at like an idiot because these were seen as extreme because the Overton window was shifted. And now Gary Stevenson, who says maybe we need wealth taxes because inequality has exploded, he's called a fucking communist, which is like milquetoast social democracy.
Stupid. Wealth taxes are not socialist. They're not.
They are not so. If anything, they are protecting capitalism because capitalism is destroying itself, and in order to at least stop people from becoming radicalized out of capitalism, you kind of need capitalism to work. So it's very ironic that people like Gary Stevenson, who again probably doesn't want to see the end of capitalism, he wants to quote unquote fix it. These people on the right do not understand that. They're like, oh, you must be a communist. I'm like, sure, carry on calling people like Gary Stevenson communists. One day he might become a fucking communist. So carry on. I'm good with that.
Facts.
Absolutely. And I hope it isolates them towards us. That's what we want. QVC Owl said, if you're a socialist, you have to be sleeping in a cardboard box under a bridge smear. So old and lame. Yet you participate in society, etc. Yes.
Hey, look. I have an iPhone. Am I a fake socialist?
This is it. So this is really interesting. Whenever people like us who say that we are communist or socialist or whatever, Marxist, whatever, people are like, but you have an iPhone and your shoes
as if
are
that
like
contradicts it though.
But it's so stupid though, because these are just symbols of wealth do not mean that someone is wealthy. I think what this capitalist lie that we all have these things that we own, that therefore means that we aren't A, struggling, or B, wanting to dismantle capitalism is like, wake up. Like, it's so fucking surface level. These are just symbols of wealth. Doesn't mean anything.
Well, it's funny, I was thinking about this exact point the other day, which is that the young are richer than ever because they've got smart TVs, they've got PlayStation 5s, they've got MacBooks and iPhones. Like, yes, we have a lot of material commercial products, largely through like paying it off monthly, but I digress. What we don't have though is fucking housing. And yes, you can look back at yesteryear in the 70s and 80s and go, well, they didn't have iPhones, they didn't have TVs, but they had a fucking house. So really, who's materially better off? This iPhone, right? At the end of the day, I'm not wealthier because of this iPhone. It's a gadget that distracts me from the fact that I don't have a house. It doesn't really mean I'm wealthy, does it? Because at the end of the day, when this iPhone, which is already cracked, right? When this iPhone's done, I'm not going to be able to rent this iPhone out and live on that rent for the rest of my life. If you have a house, though, which you bought really cheaply, and you pay off your mortgage, you can rent that fucker out and live on that wealth. So TV or not TV, who's wealthier? Also, I really hate this argument when people say, but you're a socialist with a laptop. And I'm like, okay, because you don't understand what socialism or capitalism is. Right? Socialism isn't no phone, no business, no commerce, right? Socialism is about ownership. It's the social ownership of the means of production. So what would happen under socialism is the iPhone would still exist, Apple would still exist, but instead of the fucking CEO and the shareholders getting everything, those that make the phone and those that do the advertising, the work, they collectively own it. So more of my money spent on this phone is going to go to the workers. It's more pro-business to be a socialist.
Wild concept. No, but socialists only eat potatoes and communicate via carrier pigeons. Fucking stupid. Dum-dums.
Also, if your iPhone was a house, it would be a new build that wasn't wired up to the electricity grid because the
Facts.
come with a fucking
And has
charger.
Astro that floods as well when it rains.
Yeah. So Michael 1988 said there's a template in Helena's Discord to send emails to the Electoral Commission complaining, of course, about Reform's Vote Green, Get Illegals policy.
Yeah.
Just an absolutely insane policy. I just wanted to say, like, first of all, so I just went, while you guys were talking that, I just went on the Vote Greens Get Illegals website just to look at the exact phrasing that they used.
Yeah.
And I'll quote it to you. It says, of the remaining areas, given that they want to, like, kick areas, kick people, detention centres from areas where Reform are. They say, of the remaining areas, given the Green Party advocate for open borders, we will prioritise Green-held constituencies and Green-run councils to put these sites, right? So that's, I think, making it clear that either a Green-run constituency, i.e. at the MP level, or a Green-run council, either of those are an acceptable place to put a detention facility. Well, this is interesting because surely that just disincentivises people who are in an area where the Greens win this time round from voting Reform in 2029, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because
why would they vote Reform?
Yeah, why would they vote Reform? Because you've already told them, oh, regardless of what happens next, you could have a migrant detention facility put in your area now. And if you don't like, if you don't like quote unquote illegal migrants, if you don't like refugees, you're not going to vote for Reform, who are going to. It just seems like you're driving people towards Restore at that point, or driving people towards the Conservative Party, who aren't going to dump a migrant detention centre in your backyard.
Well, even Restore understands this, which is why they've attacked Reform on this. They've said, again, I don't endorse their politics. Well, we're just going to deport them, or we're not going to bother putting them in detention centres, which is what they said. We lost you for a second. Restore attacked them for it. This policy was literally made for likes on Twitter. That was it.
Yeah.
They've got 20,000 likes from the video on Twitter, and they're literally patting themselves on the back like, oh my god, like the very, very right wing website Twitter has endorsed this policy. Well done, lads. Yeah, good one. You've made a policy for literally likes on Twitter, you utter bellends. Ordinary people can be like, what the fuck? And you're absolutely right, Ben. They've literally told people, actually, don't fucking vote for us. Like, you've actually given them an incentive not to vote Reform. Like, carry on doing these policies, by the way. Like, I endorse this from Reform. If they're talking more about this rather than like trying to sound left-wing on the economy, I'm all for it. I was more worried about Reform when Nigel Farage said he would nationalise certain industries. Like, that worried me because that resonates with people. But now it's only the Green Party talking about it. Fucking stick Tsar Yusuf on another beach with a suit with his fucking shitty sunglasses. Do it again and again and again.
I want him back.
You're going to see those pollings go down, baby.
Yeah, come back. Go to Brighton.
Katie Marshall, who does her own stream as well, said, hello, turn left, Scottish Green Party member here. I've been talking to friends in the party about how they feel, and this was commented during the Zia Youssef video section, and because I'm a polite lass, I'll just say colourful language was used by most of us. Yes, I think the Scottish Green Party are in a similar place to the Green Party of England and Wales. Layla Spellwind said, forecast to vote Reform, we guarantee no detention centres are built here. Forecast to vote Green, prioritised for detention centres. Lol, it's petty shit.
It is petty shit, but it will never happen. Like, it's literally the emptiest, like, sound bite that I think they've done to date. And they do pretty empty sound bites consistently, but that's the emptiest one. And I do hope that a lot of people just see right through that bullshit and be like, but you won't.
Like, by the way, there's no way they'll do this. I don't know if it's legal. It's not going to happen. But again, it was made for likes on Twitter, and that's it. I don't know who else they're convincing.
Yeah.
And of course, there was lots of comments about Zia Youssef making himself look a tit, and as Curtis saying, and Actual Intrepid said, "You look a tit, Curtis, but that Curtis Daly, but that on a shirt." I did want to say, though, Terry Regan said how they're going to build detention centres anyway if the Greens are in charge. It would be for the Greens to decide. There is a counter-argument to that, of course, which is, I think, Section 77 or 77. Basically, the national government can overrule local government and enforce planning permission. But do Reform really want to set that as a policy? These supposedly small government conservatives, do they really want to set the policy for a potential 2034 Zack Polansky prime minister that he can just come in and go, right, we're going to build council housing here. Oh, the local authority objects, does it? Well, fuck that local authority the way you fucked over the Greens local authority.
But I don't think they would think that far ahead. They would take that argument see, we can do it, which is fine. If they want to open those doors, go for it. I don't know if they even thinking that far ahead, but
yeah. Yeah, definitely. They are very, very short-sighted. And now I think possibly my favourite comment. So people have noticed that the Zia Yusuf had a pimple on his head, and people were like, I think if it was anyone else, I'd be like, don't mock his appearance for God's sake. But because he's such a twat and he's trying to do something that is just so American politics, so fucking nasty. I do have to highlight Poodlefish Girl's comment. Saw someone say it's a nipple because Zack has hypnotized him. Lol.
Can I please steal that for Twitter?
That's so fucking
I'm looks like Zack's hypnobeam was working because his nipple's getting bigger on his forehead. Oh my god, please can I take that?
Oh my god.
That's so good.
Do take it, that is funny.
I promise I'll put a comment underneath saying that was from one of our viewers, but
that is funny. I think it's a really nice comment to end on, actually.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Ben.
Yeah, I just double check. No, cool, we're all good. We're all up to date. Yes, and I'll hand back to you to end the show. I'm sorry it's been such a long one.
No.
And yes, and I will hand back to you guys. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you. Yeah, really great comments, guys. I think that last one definitely is a belter. I'll be
really good
show,
isn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was good.
Really enjoyed
thank you, Curtis, for joining me on Monday. It doesn't feel like Monday because it's Bank Holiday week. It feels like Sunday, but it's Monday.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yesterday it still feels like a Sunday, but even though some of the themes of the show were serious, it felt like a nice bank holiday show where we can just take the piss out of a lot of people. So in a way, it felt like quite a fun show. I enjoyed myself. I hope you did.
No, I absolutely did. Thank you so much, Curtis. Excellent analysis as always. And it's always nice to have Curtis with me. But it's always nice to have you guys too. So thank you so much for being here with me on another Monday. So I hope that you guys have a great rest of your week. Don't forget that we are Norman Ireland is on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays at 7:30. And I'll see you guys. Wait, sorry. Don't forget you can also become a YouTube member for 99p. I should have written it again. Sorry, Cass, I actually always forget. Cass is like, you need to write this in your script. And I'm like, yeah, I always forget. Anyway, you guys know the drill, right? Go to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support and then you can find everything that you need there, to be honest. But Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 7:30 Normal Island. Take care, guys.